So maybe at this point in your business, you've gotten pretty good at writing copy or placing ads really well or targeting or blog posting or something like that. And maybe as a result of those efforts, you feel like you're getting what looks like a lot of traffic or a lot of revenue from those efforts. But the question I have for you today, right now, is do you really know? One way to easily answer this question is to use your data. And of course, the best way to use your data is to start with KPIs or key performance indicators. So today, I'm gonna help you understand what KPIs are, the context that you should be thinking about them in, some great info on a few really important KPIs that you absolutely need to know about, and I'm gonna show you how to use the data that you're gathering to actually help your business. My name is Trent Kennelly, I'm a marketing strategist, and on this channel, I talk about all the things that you can do to improve your business through marketing, sales, and analytics. So if that sounds good to you and you're excited, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, comment and let me know what your KPI of choice is, or if you just didn't see the one you've been thinking about on this list, I'd be happy to talk to you about it in a little more detail. But until then, let's get started. All right, now for a little context, a little what is this thing? KPIs or key performance indicators are really just telling you how your business is doing in a very specific area. It's a number or a statistic or some sort of calculation that gives you a glimpse into one part of your business. So for example, how much are you earning for every dollar that you spend? How many visitors does it take to get you to a conversion or a purchase? It's really a photo in time. So it's taking that glimpse of your business at that moment when you're doing that calculation to understand how you're doing right then. And as such, it really shouldn't be the only thing that you rely on. You shouldn't just go, oh, my conversion rate is up or down. I need to drive towards that. And that's the only thing I'm going to be focusing on. It is something that informs you. It is not the entirety of your business. Particular KPIs are also only going to be really useful in particular situations. So if you're building organic traffic, the return on ad spend is not going to be very informative because you're not spending on a cost per click basis for that organic traffic. You're trying to build that traffic to come in without having to do cost per click as the way of pulling that traffic in, okay? If you're building social media accounts, the open rate's not gonna tell you much because there isn't an open rate associated with social media. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish, which KPIs you use. So with that said, let's go through a bunch of KPIs and I'm gonna show you exactly how to use them and what situations you use them in. First, return on investment or ROI. So the question here is the ratio between how much you're earning and how much you've spent to earn that money. The calculation is very simple. It's your revenue over your expenses, okay? You want your revenue to be more than your spend for obvious reasons, because if you're spending more than you're making, you're losing money, okay? So the calculation will come out to less than 1, or more than 1. Or it can be shown as under 100%, 100%, or more than 100%. But let's just stick to the 1. So if you're greater than 1, then you're earning more than you spend. So 1.5 would mean that you're earning $5 for every 10 that you spend, okay? Breaking even would be just the number 1 directly. So if you're making 1, that means the amount that you're making and the amount that you're spending is exactly the same. And if it's less than 1, then you're spending more than you earn. It's a money-losing prospect, so you really don't want to do that. This is a global calculation that you would use in just about any scenario. This isn't really stuck to one channel or another, though you can use return on ad spend to get this same calculation for the clicks that you're spending money for to get people to come into your site and the amount that you're earning from those clicks. So it is also applicable there, but return on investment is more global than that. You want to know how much is the revenue, how much is the expense, employee costs, admin expenses, all that sort of stuff. Am I making more than I'm spending on a global basis? Next is cost per acquisition or customer acquisition cost. So that's CPA or CAC. It's represented both ways, but it's the same thing, okay? This is the average amount of money that it takes to acquire a single customer. So I want to be very clear here. I'm not talking about the revenue that the customer brings you. I'm talking about just getting that person to buy from you and be your customer, okay? So what you're doing here is you're taking all of the expenses for that specific marketing channel where you acquired those customers. So maybe that's email, maybe that's Facebook ads, whatever. And you're boiling them down into the view of a single customer. How much would it cost on average to get that customer to come to me, okay? So the calculation is then all of the expenses that are related to that marketing channel. If it's Facebook ads, that would be the total you're paying for those clicks. If it's email, it'll be how much is the email tool and any ancillary tools you have going into email marketing, divided by the number of new customers, Again, not their money, the customers themselves. It's also very important not to look at repeat customers and new customers with the same calculation. You want to have a separate cost per acquisition for repeat customers and new customers. The reason for this is that previous customers, people who have already bought from you before, are much more likely to buy from you again than a new customer is to buy from you the first time, which means that it's a lot easier to convince them to come back, which means that it's a lot cheaper to convince them to come back because you don't have to spend as much on Facebook ads, or you don't have to spend as much on email sends, etc. Okay? So you want to make sure that you're separating these two out because the numbers can be drastically different. Maybe it costs you $50 for that first photo book, but it only costs you $10 for the second photo book, and that is really where the value lies, okay? So this is really important to use for marketing channels and not globally. If you can clearly track where customers are coming from, if they're coming from social media organically, if they're coming from Facebook ads, if they're coming from Google ads, whatever, it becomes a lot easier to identify the costs that are associated with each of those channels so that you can work on getting them down by either increasing the price or reducing the friction or fixing the funnel or whatever. It could be 1,000 things at that point, but it's much easier to identify it once you know what the cost basis looks like on a channel per channel basis. Next is open rate. So open rate is email specific. You pretty much only use this on email because no other system really has an open rate and it's not really reported in that way in any case, okay? So the calculation here is the number of people who opened an email that you sent divided by the number of people who were sent that email. So if 100 people were sent an email, 30 people opened it, your open rate is 30%. Now, in my opinion, it would be better to calculate the number of people who opened divided by the number of people who received the email because that's not always 100% of the people that you sent it to. In fact, if you're hitting 96%, that's typically considered very good. You can check out this video to understand a little bit more about spam and deliverability. But in any case, you want to have a 30% minimum for your open rate, and anything above that is pretty much gravy. You're doing really well if you're hitting over 30%. If you're not getting 30%, then you're really gonna start to see serious problems in your email working just functionally. You're gonna start to see more spam complaints, you're gonna see more spam boxes, you're gonna get into the black hole spam box, which is the second spam box that you never see. You can check that video I just pointed out for a little more info on that. But in any case, you don't want to be in this situation because you're going to start to be identified as a spammer, and it's just going to be harder and harder to send those emails. Next is click-through rate. So click-through rate is the percentage of people who saw something and then clicked. The calculation for CTR is roughly the number of clicks divided by the number of impressions. So the calculation here is very malleable. It's not always over impressions because ads use it that way. They use it as clicks over impressions, meaning the number of times that the ad was seen. But email will use it as clicks divided by the number of opens, meaning the number of people that opened the email, how many of them clicked. This is really an incredibly valuable tool because it effectively measures the interest level by the viewer. If your CTR is lower than you expect, maybe it's lower than 5%, on Facebook ads, for instance, then you can really start to investigate what's going on, if people are actually interested in what you offer. Maybe it's just bad ad copy or something like that, but you can really start to focus once you know whether the CTR is low or high or where you expect it to be. Then the final one I want to talk about is conversion rate. So this is a pretty universally used one. It's the percentage of people that interact with you, your page, your social media, whatever, that actually make a purchase from you. So the calculation is the number of unique visitors divided by the number of purchases. Most often you're going to see that on your web page just because that's where you control that information the closest. And you can get really granular here as far as channels are concerned, because if you're looking at Google Analytics or whatever analytics tool you're using, you can clearly identify the channels that these people are coming through and whether they're making purchases at the end or not. This is very advantageous to understand which channels are doing best and worst, and help you know if a channel you're putting a lot of work into should just be dropped or should be focused on more, or if you should be focusing somewhere that you haven't been, or whatever. This is really where very strategic decisions about the bottom line can be made. All right, so let's kind of paint a picture here. Let's put all this together, because data in a vacuum really is not going to help you at all. You need to look at this like a story. If your ROI is down for an ad, what does the click-through rate look like? What does your frequency look like? What other things could be happening that are affecting the return on investment for this ad? If your cost per acquisition is rising, is that due to your internal costs increasing? Is that a reduction in demand? Is that something else? You really need to look very closely to understand that. These are, again, key performance indicators, not the only things that you need to look at to make sure that your business is running smoothly. They just indicate that there are good things or bad things happening. Now, that said, sometimes by simply tying a few KPIs together, it becomes a lot easier to have a path to investigate on. For example, let's just go back to CPA for a minute. Your CPA, let's say from January to June, is $50. Suddenly in July, it jumps to $70, seemingly out of nowhere. Well, we already have CPA as one indicator to outline the story, but let's look at users and let's look at conversion rate to start to tell a deeper story. Let's assume at the same time period where you've got June at $50 CPA and July at $70 CPA, that the users coming into your site cuts in half. So you've got 100 users in June, 50 users in July, and your conversion rate stays the same, 5% and 5%. That means that in June, you might have had 5 people purchase from you. In July, you have 2.5 people purchase from you. Obviously, there's not a half a person, doesn't exist, but you get the idea. It's kind of an average. It's just kind of figuring out how many people are purchasing from you, okay? So you can start to see in this situation that the real problem was the users cutting in half, and you can say, all right, well, the cost went up because the number of users coming in is lower, and those users, once they're in, are purchasing, so we need to figure out how to get people to come back to the site again. Maybe I need to fix my ads, maybe I need to change my social, something like that. This is just an example. It should illustrate really that KPIs can be used as beacons. They are not the whole story, but if you put them together, they start to become more of a story. So there you go. That's a bunch of KPIs for you and how to use them. I hope that that helped you out. There are obviously thousands more that you can use. These are just some of the most common examples and some of the ones that you really need to focus on for your business to be successful. I would love to know if you have another one that you really rely on. I'd love to know why you think it works or why it does work for you. Otherwise, if you want me to talk about any other specific KPIs, just let me know. Happy to talk about it in the comments at least. Otherwise, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you're into it, and I'll catch you in the next one.